Hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Miss Coffee here, and today we're back with a whip and chat. Whip stands for work in progress, so get out whatever that is for you and work along with me as I tell you some stories about the coffee house shenanigans. Now, I hope you all had a wonderful weekend. Hopefully you relaxed, maybe touched a little bit of grass, or did something fun with your family. Either way, I hope it was a good one for you. So this weekend was a pretty chill weekend for us. I have so much to tell you, so we're just going to jump right in. This weekend was a pretty chill weekend for us. This was the last weekend of the summer. The kids actually went back to school the day I'm putting this up. So Tuesday the 22nd, my kids returned back to school. Now, y'all, let me just tell you like this. Before I tell you and get into these stories, how are you doing? Describe your mood in one word. You can describe more than one word, but in one word, how would you describe your mood? And feel free to leave multiple comments because I don't want you to forget. Because y'all know I ask a lot of questions, so feel free at any time to leave multiple comments. My comment thing, by the way, is a little janked up. So if you leave a comment and I don't get to it for a day or two, it's not because I'm avoiding you. It's because there's something going on with my YouTube studio, and it's not telling me that I have comments, and then when I do, they're like 3 days old. And I'm like, what the flip? And I'm usually pretty on top of my comments. So the fact that like I'm answering comments or not seeing them for a day or so before like I get notified by it is kind of annoying. So yeah, there's that. So yeah, this weekend was a pretty chill weekend because this was the last weekend before the kids return back to school today. And of course, you guys know mentally I have been going through it. I don't know how parents do it. Like, I don't know how parents get excited about their kids going to school. I hate it. I hate it. I don't know what it is, but I would much prefer like my family be like here at home doing what they want to do, relaxing, doing stuff together or whatever. But I would much rather them still be home. Now, I know there's the option of homeschooling, but unless you're willing to pay me $2,000 to get them into homeschooling, they will go back to public school. So we had open house night yesterday, and these stories are about to be all over the place, so just a heads up. We had open house yesterday for the kids. They usually do open house the day before school starts. I don't know why they do it like that. Every other school I've ever taken and been in or dealt with myself has always done it like a couple of days before school started. So the fact that they do it the day here before school starts, I don't know why, but it is what it is. So they had open house yesterday, and I get a message before open house from the neighbor lady. Now, the neighbor lady is the lady who is the mother of the two little kids that Maggie couldn't play with for the longest time. She's the mother, okay? If you hear me take a pause or whatever, I'm just vaping, don't worry about it. So I'm sitting there, and she sends me a message, and she goes, "Hey, what school is your kids going to?" And I'm like, "Well, Orion goes to the academy, but Maggie's going to the intermediate school here in town. Why? What's up?" Now, one, she had my phone number from back before the kids got into it, and I guess she never got rid of it. I got rid of hers, but she didn't get rid of mine. I don't know. Explain that to me. I don't know. Anyways, so she let me know that her kids are being sent out of town. And I'm like, what do you mean? So there's a couple of different school districts, or I guess there's school districts here. But there's a couple of different school districts here where I live. There's like 3. And so depending on where you live, that determines where your children will go to school. So we thought, no, this year they were doing things differently. And when they filled up the other school that is close to the house here, sort of, is over there by Orion School, if y'all remember me telling y'all about that. When they filled up that school, they went ahead and started sending kids to the other school all the way outside of town, like literally on the outskirts. Like you pass the sign that says now leaving, Williston, and they've been sending kids to that school. And I'm just sitting there like, what do you mean because I didn't know why she was asking me what school the kids were going to. And she was like, because they sent my kids out of town. And I'm like, wait, what? And so apparently when her kids went to elementary school, she asked for them to go to a different elementary school than, say, Maggie went to. Okay, which the elementary school she sent her kids to was on the same side of town as Orion's old school. Well, apparently when they did the zoning, because her kids were at that school, they sent them out of town, whereas my kids both got sent to the school here in town. Now, there's only one Innovations Academy, and again, you have to sign up to be into that school. And you, between your grades and everything else, you have to qualify to get into that school. So it's not like a school that you just register your kid for. They actually hand pick your kid to go to that school, which is why when they said that he qualified to go, I was like, wait, what? So I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh gosh, are you sure this wasn't a typo? Because apparently a couple of days before, why is none of my wax working? A couple of days before school started, there was not a security breach, but there was a virus in the system for school. And with the number of emails, listen, these kids have barely started going back to school, and they already sending out 17 emails a day about absolutely nothing. And that phrase that this could be an email is turned into, I don't need you to be sending me all these emails. Like, I'm literally getting 7 emails a day from both schools talking about sporting events, extracurriculars that they're doing, and all this extra stuff. And I'm like, look, listen, my kids go to school and come home. We don't need all this extra crap in my inbox, because I'm just going to delete it. And then they look at me funny whenever I go in for parent-teacher conferences, and they're like, yeah, we sent out something in the thing. And I'm like, yeah, no, I threw that away because I can't be bothered. Y'all send out way too many emails, and it's annoying. And so she, I guess, called the school to see what was going on and why her kids had been being sent out of town. And she thought last year, right, when she signed her kids up for this other school, she was like, well, it's better than the elementary school that Maggie goes to. The teachers are a little bit more focused on the kids, blah, blah, blah. So she essentially was trying to make sure her kids got a good education, even though her one child just refused to go for half the year. So she ended up getting held back. So yeah, I'm telling her business. I don't care. She ain't never going to see this. So yeah, so I'm sitting there and I'm like, you know, that, yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me why they would send your kids out of town, for school when they went to school in town for elementary. And she goes, I don't know, so I'm going to have to call them. So she calls them, and then she messages me back, and she goes, it's zoning. And I'm like, what do you mean it's zoning? We live in the same complex. Matter of fact, I live further back in the complex than you do. So what do you mean it's zoning? Well, apparently, because her kids went to that particular school, those children were sent out of town. Now, you have 2 options when it comes to schools here. You can either take your kid yourself, because they don't have a bus system with the school. The busing systems around here are privately owned. So you literally are having to pay an arm and a leg just to get your kid on the bus, okay? And when I say an arm and a leg, it was going to cost me probably $2,200 a year to have the kids ride the bus, okay? So I'm sitting there and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not paying that. I'm not doing it. That's almost as much as my rent. No, we're not doing that. So you can either pay to have the bus drivers come pick up your kid, and they're not picking them up from your house, by the way. That is not something that they do. They claim for safety reasons. I'm like, I don't think I've ever heard of a bus driver attacking a kid at home, but I could be wrong. Anyways, so apparently, you can either pay to have the bus take your kid, or you can drive your kid to school, which most parents just choose to drive their kid to school. But if you choose a bus, okay, if you choose a bus, they have designated locations of where you bring your kid to ride the bus. And so, sorry, I have a big space right here. So they had a designated area for you to ride the bus. So if you, say, are picking up the bus to go to this school out of town, you still have to go cross town to the bus stop and then wait, y'all. the way I was cackling, okay? The way I was cackling, because she was so upset. She was so upset. She called the school and they told her, no, we didn't make a mistake. Because your child went to this school last year, they are being sent to this school this year. And she's like, well, I don't want them at that school, blah, 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 because that's too far away for me to drive. Could you just, you know, if there's any way we can get them into the school here in town. And they were like, yeah, no, sorry, like, we can't. So she was upset because, you know, she now has to make a decision. Do I drive them the 35 minutes out of town? Do I drive them the 35 minutes out of town? Or do I just let them ride the bus and drive them 20 minutes, or not 20 minutes, it's like 12 minutes, to pretty much back to where their elementary school was. There's a bus pickup for the kids going to that particular school. The other problem with this is that bus leaves that stop at 7:15 in the morning. So she would have to get up at like 6, get both her kids up and ready, and then get both her kids up and ready, and then be like, okay, bet. Now we're going to drive 12 minutes into town, sit and wait for this bus, wait for the bus to get here, and then pick you up. And then when she goes to pick them up from school, same thing. She would have to wait for them at that bus stop because they only go to that one particular bus stop for this area. So she was hot. Like, she was mad. And I was like, I'd be kind of mad too. I'm not even going to lie. Because that's kind of a far away way to drive to, that's kind of a far way to drive to have your kids, like, dropped off and picked up for school unless you just go get them yourself. And she does have a baby at home, too. Like, well, it's not really a baby. The baby's, like, a year old now. But she does have a smaller child at home. So if you have kids, you know the struggle of trying to get, like, a small child ready to go anywhere. And you turn around and, like, their whole outfit's messed up. They're missing a shoe. Their hair's askew. It's a whole struggle. It's a whole struggle. So she was upset about that. And she was like, have you gotten school supplies yet? Because it looks like Walmart's pretty empty. I'm like, I ordered mine's online. I already got all my school supplies. I don't know what you're talking about. Because she was like, you know, Maggie said she needed to go school supply shopping. I'm like, no, Maggie's school supplies sitting right here on the floor. I'm like, Maggie knows her school supplies are here. She just wants to go shopping, I guess. I don't know. I'm like, but Maggie's already got her school supplies. She's fine. So she was like all upset. And she was like, well, thank you. I guess I got to figure out what to do next. And, you know, when we went to go take the dogs out last night, her and her spouse were arguing because the mother doesn't want to have to drive them to school. And she also doesn't want to have to drive them cross town to get this bus. And I was like, you could just homeschool them. If you roll in like that, you can just homeschool them. Because she's one of those people that has to one-up you on everything. So she always feels like, you know, she's better than everybody else. And I'm like, ma'am, stop it. You ain't no better than the rest of us. Knock it off. So she was upset about that. Oh, I'm knocking drills everywhere. She was upset about that. And I looked at my email again just to verify because of course, I was scared because I was like, oh, snap. What if they sent Maggie to this other school and I just didn't realize it? So I was like, all right, bet. So, so I checked and sure enough, Maggie's, you know, going to the school we assumed she was going to. And it's partly because she's grandfathered into the academy that Orion goes to. And so I was like, yay. And that's another reason why you have to sign up for the school, because if you have younger siblings, they are grandfathered into that school. Now, you have the option of sending your kid to that school, or you can send them to the regular school, but you can send them over to the academy. So that's why Orion goes to the academy. Now, this year's going to be a little bit different, and I'll explain here in a little bit. So she was all upset about this yesterday, and I'm like, you know, it will hopefully they have a better school year than last year, because again, last year her one daughter just absolutely refused to get up to go to school. It was too early for her, and she's like, oh, well, she has mental health issues and she doesn't like school and she doesn't like this. And I'm like, yeah, but at some point you're gonna have to let little Miss Hotshot know that she can't just not do things because she doesn't want to do things. and that she has to do things that she doesn't want sometimes. It's part of life, unfortunately. I'm like, you think half of us parents want to drive our kids to school? No, we want to stand outside in the cold while a bus comes and gets them. But that's not an option here unless you're paying out of pocket a ridiculous amount of money to pick your kids up from school. So I tell Maggie yesterday, I was like, okay, so you already have your school supplies, so you're not going school supply shopping. She goes, then where are we going? Because I told her when she went outside, or when she was going outside, that we had to, I was like, don't get too dirty because we have open house tonight. Now, I don't know what she thought open house was, but it's not what she thought it was, apparently. So I tell her, don't get too dirty. We have open house tonight, but you can go outside and play. And so she was like, okay. So she goes outside. I don't see or hear from Maggie for like an hour or two. Well, it's time to get ready for open house. So I message the lady and say, can you please send Maggie home? So she sends Maggie home. The problem is, Maggie usually comes through the back door when she comes home, okay? Because the back door is unlocked for her. She doesn't have to have a key card. I don't trust her with a key card yet because the last time we gave her a key card, she lost it. And we never found it. The good thing about it is, those key cards are no longer valid, so I don't have to worry about somebody miraculously, randomly sneaking into my house. So, yeah. So I'm sitting there, and I'm like, okay. She comes in. Problem is, the sprinklers turned on as she was getting ready to come to the house. And I didn't think anything of it because I was, getting ready, and Orion was getting ready. And so I'm just kind of running around trying to get like the stuff that I need to get ready. And Maggie comes in, and she's not soaking wet, but she's damp. Okay, she's damp. And I look at her and I'm like, ma'am, what happened to you? And she goes, I got caught in the sprinklers. I didn't think they would have turned on this early. The sprinkler, they have it on a timer. And typically, the timer doesn't go off that early in the afternoon. So she wasn't expecting it. So she just started walking and bam, hit right in the face with a sprinkler. And she's like, oh God. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, okay, well, please go dry yourself off because we have somewhere to go. And I don't want you going looking like a wet dog. And she's like, I'm a dog. No, you're not a dog. I'm just saying I don't want you looking like a wet dog. So can you please go put on some dry clothes? And so she goes, okay. She finds the rattiest clothes that she can find. And she goes out to school. And I'm like, all right, whatever. Daisy is apparently barking. I'm going to guess I'm getting packages delivered. Hang on a second. Yep, I got a delivery. Orion's new backpack came in. Anyways, so Maggie goes and gets dressed. Orion gets dressed. We walk the dogs, and then we head out to the thing. I message Mr. Coffee, and because even though Mr. Coffee doesn't do a lot of things with school because he's usually at work, I still like for him to lay eyes on Orion's teachers in case something happens where I can't. He at least knows what they look like or whatever, and they get some kind of introduction, okay? So I message Mr. Coffee, and I'm like, hey, we're heading out. Are you on your way? And he goes, I have a couple of things to wrap up here, and I'm on my way. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, we're not going to wait, though, so just meet us inside the school. So he goes, okay. And the reason I don't wait is because there's usually lines, and this is only an hour event. And Mr. Coffee can get stuck at work sometimes. And so I'm like, okay, I don't want to sit there for an hour waiting for him to get there and then miss all the teachers and stuff. So typically we don't wait, and he's okay with that. So we go over to the school, and first I was going to go to Maggie's school last because she has more teachers. I figured she would have more teachers than Orion does, okay? Because Maggie is transitioning from elementary to intermediate. So it's a completely different school than last year. And Maggie, where they did take a field trip to this school, she's still unfamiliar with the school because like her mom, Maggie suffered brain damage from her seizures. So she doesn't retain information like a normal kid would. And so I'm like, yeah, she's not going to remember anything about this school. And she didn't. So she was going to go last. Well, then as we turn down the road to the school, I see this line wrapped around the school for people trying to go in. So what happened was, right before school started, a couple of days before school started, they had a problem with their computers, and it ended up erasing every child in their database's schedule. So they had to go in and manually, for 2 days, they had to go in and manually input every child's schedule again, okay? And this is for the intermediate and middle school. So they had to input every child's schedule again, which of course takes time, and not everything was correct. So they had to go in and just make sure everything was, you know, whatever. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay. So, and they told us it's going to be a little crazy. So if you can get here a little bit early, we'll make sure every kid has their schedule, blah, blah, blah. And so we got there early. But when I saw that line, I was like, yep, we're going to Orion School first. So we went over to Orion School first. Sorry, I got some gapping going on here. And I think it's because of my placement. Yep, it's because of my placement. I place a little sloppy sometimes. And so it creates gaps, or because I multi-place, sometimes if you don't multi-place and pay attention, you can skip a stitch. You can skip a drill. Anyways, so yeah, so I'm sitting there and they had lines in the school and outside of the school. So I was like, yep, we're going to Orion School first. So we go to Orion School. There's not a long line, but there's still a little bit of a line. And I'm like, okay, we're going to wait in line. This will probably give your dad time to get here. So we go stand in line. We're probably in line like 20 minutes. Not a big deal. And surprisingly, I didn't get I'm bored. Because anytime we do anything with Maggie now that's not thrilling and exciting, she's bored. Okay, she's bored out of her mind. She doesn't know what to do with herself. So we wait in line. And the person, they were like, okay, we have the table split up. 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Let us know which grade you're in, and we'll have you in that line. So I was like, all right. So we go into the 7th grade line. And the guy that's standing there is like, hi. What's the name? And he looks at Maggie. He goes, what's the name? And she goes, my name's Maggie. So he's looking. He goes, I don't see a Maggie. I'm like, you won't, because you're looking for Orion, not Maggie. And he goes, oh, my bad. I thought she was the one. I'm like, no, she's just tall for her age. Meanwhile, Orion seeing this is saying nothing, okay? He's saying nothing. He's just getting his mental 50 chuckles in, okay? And so the guy goes, okay, Orion. So he finds Orion's schedule. He explains to us that this year they're doing things differently, and some of the classes that Orion has will be held at the middle school, which is the same school he went to for 5th grade, which is the school that Maggie's going to now. And I was like, wait, hold up, what? And they're like, yeah, he'll be starting his day and ending his day at the other school. And I was like, why? And they were saying about how it's just a little bit more efficient for them because the other school already has like computer labs and they don't have to buy like all this extra stuff and whatever. So they have the school split up where some of the students from the academy will go over to the middle school for part of the day for some of their classes. Orion didn't seem to care. So I was like, okay, don't make a big fuss about it. Like, what are they going to do? Be like, oh, I apologize, ma'am. Let me go ahead and make sure his entire schedule is just here. So, like, fussing isn't going to do anything about it. So I was just like, okay. I'm like, now is there going to be somebody to make sure that, you know, they cross because there's a street right there that you have to cross to get to the other school. And I'm like, is there going to be a crossing guard out there to make sure that they get to class safely? And they said, yes, we're going to make sure that everything is taken care of. And, you know, there shouldn't be any issues, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. So they were like, so he's going to start his day off there and then come back, spend a majority of his day here at the academy and then go back over there for like PE and stuff. Because they didn't have PE, or they had PE, but it was in their lunchroom. So they would have to stack up all the chairs and tables and everything else. Or they'd have to go out to the big playground that's like crossing a busy street. And so to avoid doing that this year, they decided, you know, we're just going to have you go back over to the middle school. So again, Orion didn't seem fazed. So I was just like, don't make a big deal out of it because you're going to make him nervous and weird. So let it go. So I was like, all right, whatever. So they which for those who are new to diamond painting and you're seeing me do this, this is called checkerboarding, where you do every other row and then fill it in. It helps straighten your drills. And I'm also working upside down, if you couldn't tell, just because I'm at the top of this kit because it's almost done. And it's almost done. I'm at the top, and I'm trying to like get a hang of it better because of it being where it's at. So I was like, okay, so let's go meet your teachers that are here, and then we'll go over there to meet your other teachers. And he goes, okay, because he has 3 of his classes are in the middle school, and then the rest of his classes are in the academy. So I was like, all right. So I'm sitting there, and they give us the schedule, and they're like, you know, have a great year, good luck, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, so I'm looking at Orion's schedule. The first thing I see for the first quarter, pre-algebra, second quarter, algebra, third quarter, calculus, or introduction to calculus. And I'm like, wait, hold up. No. Something's got to be wrong here. And the guy goes, oh, I'm sorry. Is there a problem? I'm like, this says calculus. And he goes, yes. And I'm like, he's in 7th grade. I'm pretty sure they don't do calculus in 7th grade. He goes, oh, no, that's his advanced classes. So essentially, he's taken his advanced classes at the academy. And then his regular classes, like his electives, are being taken at the middle school. And I was like, wait, hold up. So and he's like, he took a test at the end of the year last year to see what math he should be placed in. He should be placed in 10th grade math. And I was like, oh God. Oh God. Oh God. And he said, depending on how well he does, he could even be doing college algebra next year. And I'm like, oh God. The way I wanted to pass out, y'all, I'm never going to be able to help this child with this homework ever. Ever. Calculus. Meanwhile, he has the biggest shit-eating grin on his face, and he's just like, I'm excited. And I'm like, why are you excited about this? He goes, I like math. And I was like, you right. So we go in, and they tell us what hallway to go to get to his class. And luckily, his classes are all on the first floor this year, so he doesn't have to go up and down the stairs. So that had him excited. He doesn't have to go up and down the stairs, so he's like, okay. So we go to his first class, and there's a guy sitting on a table, and he's talking to one of the other parents. And I also asked, you know, well, when I drop him off in the morning, should I just drop him off at the other school, because his day starts off with a class at the other school, and then he jumps back over to the academy. And so I'm like, should I drop him off at the other school since his day starts off there? And they were like, yes, he will start his day at the other school. So when you drop him off at the other school, and then he'll bring and make his way back to this school, and then he'll go back to the other school at the end of the day. And I was like, okay. So Orion's taken, which he didn't get into the weightlifting class, which made him a little sad, but he got into something way better. So we go over, and there's a guy sitting on a desk, and he's talking to one of the other parents. And I was like, hi, we're looking for, you know, Mr. So-and-so. And the guy was like, that's me. And I was like, oh, okay, well, you know, this is Orion. And both kids are standing there. I'm like, this is Orion, and Orion's going to be your new student for this year. And he goes, yeah, this is pre-algebra. This is pre-something class. It's another advanced class. And I was just like, oh, well, that's cool. I'm like, I don't know how well he likes science. And he goes, it's all right. I'm like, but he goes, oh, don't worry. We're not like a typical science class. We're not going to be dissecting frogs or anything. He goes, we're going to dissect a heart, but not frogs or anything. And I'm like, did you think that sentence was going to make it better? It's not a frog, but it's a heart. I'm like, heart of what? And where did you get these hearts from? Like, he's not going to be performing open heart surgery in class or anything. Like, I know he's advanced, but like, you're not going to have like a human cadaver come in and y'all just picking pieces out of it or something. And the guy just laughed, and he goes, you're funny. I like you. No. And I was like, okay. And he goes, no, it's like a chicken heart or something. And he goes, he's explaining the whole process to me. And he goes, how it's done humanely, and how the cadavers for the chicken, whatever, are donated to the school. And then the school, like, they're taught how farming would work. So agriculture is tied into it. And I was just like, oh, wait, hold up. You're not going to make him like hatch a chicken, raise it all school year, and then dissect it later, right? And he's like, no. I said humanely, and that would traumatize not only the student, but also me. So no. And I was like, okay, I'm just trying to understand because I'm not advanced. And he just starts laughing. And he's like, yeah, no, that's not it. So he looks at Maggie and he goes, but don't worry, we're going to have a lot of fun. Maggie starts giggling. She is giggling excessively, okay? Now remember, my children are all tall for their age. But for some reason, the guy thought he was talking to Maggie as his student. And I was like, no, I said Orion. He goes, oh, my bad. Which one of y'all is Orion? And Orion raises his hand. He goes, then what's your name, little lady? She goes, Maggie. And he's like, oh, is this your big brother? And she goes, yeah. She goes, but don't worry, I'll see you in a few years. And she like winks at the teacher, and the teacher winks back and gives her like finger guns. And she goes, Mommy, can I come to this science class when I get in Orion's grade? And I'm like, I don't really have a choice in that, but I'll see what I can do. I'll see what I can do. So, because Maggie loves science, so when she heard about like what they're going to be doing, like their curriculum for that year, she got all excited. She's my science person. And so, which I can't imagine Maggie being a science person, but she loves science. She loves science and history. And so I was just like, yeah, no, this is your student. That is his sister. They're just tall for their age. And I looked around, and pretty much Maggie was as tall as most of the 7th graders there, whereas Orion was as tall as most of the teachers. And so, because Orion is like 5'6", and Maggie is like 5'4", so like they're pretty tall kids, and Maggie's only 10, so like, you know, she's tall for her age. Apparently she can't gain weight for her age to save her life, but she's tall for her age if nothing else. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay. And I'm like, you know, can you tell us where the next teacher is? Is this his pod? Because these classes all have a pod. And the pods, which is another reason why I was worried about him going to the other school, the pods are safeguards against, like, you know, anything bad happening at the school. If you know, you know. Just heads up, I live here in the U.S., so hopefully you know what I'm talking about, because I'm not going to say it out loud. I'm not putting that bad juju out there. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay. So they were like, his next teacher is going to be around the border here. She's over there. And I was like, okay. So look at the paper. And I go, okay, so your next teacher, we're going over to your next teacher. We go over to the next teacher. I introduce myself and I'm like, hi, I'm Orion's mom. You know, you apparently are his math teacher. And it was this cute little lady, and she was like, yes, I will be his math teacher. Hopefully, you know, he likes math. And I'm like, and Orion's just like, it's my favorite. And she goes, really? Mine's too. And then she looks at Maggie and she goes, do you like math? And she goes, I'm okay at it. And I was just shocked at how comfortable Maggie was, because usually Maggie's a big ball of nerves when we go places like this. So I was just like, you know, like, wait, Maggie's actually comfortable with this? Like, Maggie's not freaking out or being shy or anything of the sort? Because in the last few years, whenever we would go meet her teachers or anything, she'd be super backwards and shy, and she didn't want to talk or say anything. I don't think I've ever seen Maggie talk to teachers so much in my life. And these weren't even her teachers. We're getting to theirs. We're going to get to hers. If we don't get to them today, I might do a second whip and chat this week, just a heads up. I might. Just because I don't have a third video for the week. So what do you guys think about a second whip and chat if I don't have a third video? And it won't be an hour long, don't worry. It'd be like 30 minutes. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, all right. So the teacher is explaining to us how the first, you know, how he's going to be doing pre-algebra, and then they'll move on to algebra, and then they'll move on to calculus by the end of the year. And the way that they have this formatted is specialized to him, just like his classes are. So Orion was just sitting there smiling. Maggie's giggling because the lady is talking about the math and looking at her. Maggie had an idea of what was going on. I'm just sitting there trying to pay attention to what she's saying, because it all sounded like she was speaking completely different language, and I had no clue what the hell she was talking about. Not because she was speaking another language, because she was talking about math, and my brain immediately checked out, okay? And so she's going over this whole thing with them, and Orion's like, awesome. Maggie's like, I'm excited. And she goes, I'm glad you're excited. I can't wait to see you in class tomorrow. And she goes, oh, you won't see me. And the lady goes, oh, why not? I'm like, because your student is Orion. That's Orion. That's his little sister. And she goes, little? You're taller than me. Maggie was. Maggie was taller than her. And the lady goes, well, I apologize. And Orion's just sitting there. And I think he was getting a kick out of it because he would just kind of smile and look at Maggie, and they would look at each other and smile and then look at me. And I'm like, knock it off. And so the lady finishes like her introduction to Orion and like what they're going to be doing and asking him if he's excited. And then she goes, okay, I got to ask you this question. And she goes, can you solve this problem for me? So Orion goes over to the board. He looks at it. He kind of cocks his head back and forth. And then he solves the problem. And she goes, oh yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun this year. She goes, I have no doubt that he'll be in calculus by the end of the year. And I'm like, but it's just pre-algebra. It's just pre-algebra. Why are we going into calculus? Like, how do you even make that leap? Like, it just seems like such a leap. And I don't know if it's just because I don't, it's not that I'm upset that the kids are growing up. It just makes me sad. It makes me sad because my babies aren't babies anymore. They're now like tiny humans, like real legit tiny humans. And they can fend for themselves and take care of themselves. And they don't need mommy as much. And so I've been like drowning my mental health into this game that I started playing, which is called Palia. I'm completely obsessed with it. If you don't believe me, ask the folks over on Twitch. I don't think we've done a stream in 2 weeks where I haven't played that at the end of the stream. And it's a very cozy game, but I feel needed in the game. So I've been deep diving into the game. According to therapy, therapy says that I started getting depressed because of the realization is starting to hit me that the kids aren't small anymore. And that's the reason why I've deep dived into this game, is because of the fact it makes me feel like I'm needed. And I have this sense of always needing to be needed. And I'm like, well, that's the thing, is when I'm needed online, she goes, that's different. Those are people you don't know. You didn't birth the people online that need you for things. Your children are different than people outside of your house. She goes, it's the reason why a lot of people will craft. She goes, as you know, she goes, crafting comes from a lack of having something to do and feeling accomplished. So people will craft to give themselves something to do and to feel accomplished. And I was like, you right. You right. So she goes, you know, there's nothing wrong with it. She goes, just make sure you're still being able to like function. And even if you deep dive into it, still make sure you're taking care and doing things with your family. And I was like, okay. So apparently that's why I've deep dove into this game. And let's see, number 7. I just need to get this one done. If I can get this one done today, I'll be happy, because then I just have this top row, and there's not much on the top row. It's overlapped a little bit, so I probably have about that much, and I'm super excited. I can easily get this done this week. Even though tomorrow, which, by the way, if you were watching me over on Twitch, and I do stream tomorrow, but my schedule is going to be a little bit wonky because Mr. Coffee is taking me out for a surprise breakfast. I didn't know he was going to take the day off, and he took the entire day off. And I was like, look, listen, I have to stream tomorrow. I have to stream. I don't really want to get off my new schedule. Like, I just started it, and I'm not going to cancel. So, yeah, no, I'm streaming tomorrow. But I will gladly go out to breakfast because he knows that's all I really wanted to do. I'm just scared of there being a repeat of last time. So I'm like, yeah, sure, we can go out to breakfast. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, so I'm like, can you tell us where the next teacher is? And they're like, they're right. And literally it's in a big U shape of how his classes are. And they're like, oh, yep, your next teacher's going to be through these doors. So we go through the doors. And there's a lady sitting at the desk, and it's his language arts teacher. And she introduces herself, and there's 2 other students in there with us. And she's looking directly at Maggie as she talks. And I for a minute there, for like a split second, I was like, why is she staring at Maggie? And then I was like, wait, does she think Maggie's her student? Like, wait, what? No, Maggie's not your student. But I didn't want to be rude and interrupt her. But she was like looking at the students and not like the parents. and she's explaining to them how her class works and how you start off with an A and you just have to maintain it. And she's not super strict because kids have enough structure and they need to learn to be kids, because kids nowadays aren't kids anymore. Kids are so quick to grow up. She goes, so I try to make it a very open environment, and we do a lot of hands-on stuff. And I'm like, what could you possibly do that's hands-on in language arts? But I'm like, you know what? That ain't none of my business. As long as he's safe and happy, I don't really care what you're doing. So she goes into this whole spiel about it, and she looks at Maggie and she goes, what do you think? And she goes, I'm excited. And Orion goes, yeah, me too. And she looks at Orion. She goes, what grade are you in, buddy? He goes, 7th. She goes, wait, are you both coming to my class? Maggie starts laughing. She goes, I keep getting that today. Maybe I should come to your classes, Orion. And Orion's like, no. She's like, Mom. I'm like, no, Maggie. I'm like, no, I apologize. She's just tall for her age. But this is your student, Orion. This is his little sister, Maggie. This is the calm before the storm. This is my feral one. This is the calm one. Don't worry. You'll see her in a couple of years. And Lay goes, oh, I'm excited because she seems very attentive. Maggie, attentive? I don't think I've ever heard those two words in a sentence. So I was like, sure. Yeah, sure, when she wants to be. Selective attentiveness, I guess. Yeah, no. No, she's okay. So we finished talking to that teacher. We go to the next class. The next class, the lady was like, okay, which one of you is my students? Because I heard there's a student that has a sister that could be a student. And I'm like, that was probably us. This is your student. That is his little sister. She's just almost as tall as him. And yeah, she's not a student yet. And she goes, you are pretty tall for your age. The teacher was taller than both kids, obviously. But, this one's going to have a little bit more confetti in it. But she starts telling them like how her grading system goes, what to expect out of her class. She gives them a paper introducing herself. She's new here from I guess she just recently moved here from like Utah, and so she's still new to, like, moved within like the last 3 months. Like summer hit and then they moved to North Dakota. And I'm like, of all places, why'd you pick here? She goes, why'd you pick here? I'm like, you know what? You right. I already like this teacher. So Orion seems to have a good plethora of teachers this year. And then we decide, okay, Mr. Coffee came in right as we talked to the last teacher, so we went and got him. And we introduced him to Orion's science teacher, the math teacher, the language arts teacher, and then this teacher was global studies. And so I was like, okay. So I was like, okay, now we have to go meet your computer teacher, your elective teacher, and your PE coach. We never met the PE coach because the gym was locked off. They were practicing volleyball. And so we didn't get to meet the gym teacher, which was sad, but I'm sure he'll figure it out. And with the way that the hallways and stuff were set up, we walked through the school to go in line just to be told to get out of the line and go to a different line. And I'm like, oh my God, because they had to redo schedules. Like they were doing like A through L at this table, M through Z at this table. And I was like, okay, we're going to that table. And Mr. Coffee's like, are they going by first or last name? I'm like, I would assume that they're going by last name, but even if they weren't, her first name starts with an M, her last name starts with a T. So I'm going to guess we're going to be in the M through Z table. He goes, oh, okay, yeah, I guess that's right. I'm like, yeah. So let's go over there. So we go over there, and the guy that we get introduced to, is the gym coach for the intermediate school. So I was like, okay, well, you're the gym coach, so this is your student, Maggie. So, you know, her real name is Magdalene, but she goes by Maggie. She answers to Maggie, because they will ask what preference does your child prefer to be, you know, they ask for essentially for pronouns. which I think is a great thing to start teaching the kids early, because now that everybody's becoming gender fluid and you don't know what gender a child would identify with, asking the child their pronouns and then their first name and what they would like to go by is a huge thing for me. So I love the fact that they did that. And so they did the same thing at Orion School as well. They asked, what pronouns there's a paper that you fill out, kind of like a questionnaire, and you give it back to the person, and then once you give it back to the person, they give you your schedule. So, I don't know if gender fluid was the right word there, but we're just going to say it was. You know what I mean? Anyways, so I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay. We're looking at Maggie's schedule because we had to go over and figure out what classes Orion was in. We just went ahead and got Maggie's schedule as well. And they were like, okay, intermediate is on the 3rd floor. And I'm like, I'm sorry, the what? The what? The third floor. Oh boy. Now there's no elevator in this school, so you're going up 3 flights of stairs. And I'm like, look, RIP to those little ankles, because the way they about to come home hurting. Luckily she's active, so it shouldn't bother her. But the way my knees were burning going up those stairs, I was like, oh God. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay. And we pass by this table, and there's like these 2 Cub Scouts and a Cub Scout leader at the table. And they were like, would you be interested in joining the Boy Scouts? Maggie looks this guy straight in the eye and goes, will you teach me how to make fire with a rock and a stick? And the guy's like, wait, what? He's like, this is Cub Scouts. She goes, well, Mama says that she's a bear. I can be a cub. I can be a Cub Scout. She goes, do we make fire? And I'm like, Maggie. The guy just has this look on his face like he is very confused and both mortified. And he's just like, we don't typically teach you how to make fire. And she goes, well, then what do? Do you play in the dirt? And the guy just kind of looks at Maggie and looks at Orion, then looks at me, and I'm like, I am so sorry. We are not interested at this time. But he gives Orion a flyer anyways. And she goes, can I have a flyer? He goes, well, honey, this is for boys. And she goes, well, that's not very nice. Why can't girls be Cub Scouts? And he goes, well, you can be a Girl Scout. And she goes, well, I want to be a Cub. I want to be part of the Cub Scouts. And I'm like, Maggie, no. And she's like, but I like to play in dirt and start fires. I am aware of this. Let's go. And the guy, she says that, the guy's face, pure mortification. He's just like, oh my God. And I'm like, don't worry, she's fine. So we go moving, and we're asking around, like, how do you find the computer lab for the middle school? And so the lady guides us to where Orion would find the middle school computer lab. We go and meet Orion's teacher. He seems very nice. And Orion loves it when he gets male teachers. Not that he has anything against female teachers, but he's had female teachers all the way up until 5th grade. And then 5th grade was his first experience with a male teacher. And he absolutely fell in love with his male teacher. Like, absolutely loved his male teacher. So, there's a very large truck. Oh, they're mowing the grass across the street. I was about to say, there's a very large truck trying to turn the corner. And it was just the lawnmower. So, he's like loving it because this year he gets 2 male teachers. Last year, I believe he had 1 male teacher. So this year he gets 2 male teachers, and he's real excited about it. And I'm like, all right, awesome, let's go. So he meets his computer teacher. But then there was one teacher whose class didn't have a class, like every like on his schedule, it has a classroom number as to where they're supposed to go. And remember, the classroom or the schedules had gotten messed up. So they said that, some of the teachers might be just placeholders because they're trying to figure out what class to put those children in and blah, blah, blah. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, there's one class doesn't have a class number next to it, and I don't know how we're going to find it. So we're just going to go ask the people sitting at the table. So we asked the people sitting at the table, and they're like, we're pretty sure that's over at the academy. And I'm like, no, the academy said it was over here. And they're like, oh, well, there's no room number. I'm like, I am also aware of that. I'm like, but they told us that this teacher is here. And the teachers at the desk were like, I don't know who that is. And I'm like, I don't expect them to know everybody on the staff, but I expect you to know where my child's class is so he's not wandering the halls aimlessly looking lost like an ASPCA dog. Like, come on now. So I was like, okay. It took us almost an hour to figure out who this teacher was and where their class was located. But we did finally find it. And we, of course, introduced Orion to her. Now, Orion was a little upset because he didn't get weightlifting like he wanted. But though he didn't get weightlifting, he got something I think is going to be a lot better for him. So I'm glad I didn't go out and waste all this money on getting weightlifting stuff when he didn't even get into the weightlifting class anyways. So he got media arts. Now, when you think media arts, one, I noticed that there wasn't an actual art class. And I was a little upset about that. Because, you know, don't take art out of schools, people. Like, what's wrong? Why are we doing this? So I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, media arts, what do you teach? And she goes, well, in this class, and she starts looking at Maggie, and I'm like, hold on, I don't mean to interrupt you. I noticed you're looking at this child here. This is not your student. That is your student. That is his little sister. And she goes, oh, my apologies. She goes, she's really tall. I'm like, yeah, I know. I create monsters. And she goes, oh, I'm sorry. So she starts looking at Orion then. Orion starts he's cackling because everybody keeps confusing Maggie for the student. And Maggie just thinks it's the funniest thing in the world as well. And so she starts explaining how in this class, and I look over as she's talking and I see a row. Like, when I say a row, I mean a row of DSLR cameras. Now, those are the fancy cameras that photographers will use, including myself. Because if you did not know, for 10 years, I was a freelance photographer before we moved here to Pennsylvania, or to North Dakota. And so I saw a line of DSLRs, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, hold up, media arts. And she goes, we're doing everything from digital art to digital website design to teaching them how to make, edit, and record videos to taking pictures. And I'm like, wait a minute, hold up. Like a real media arts school? Like a real media arts. And she goes, yeah, by the time we're done at the end of the class, they're going to be making a video and they have to choose the producer, the actors, and everything else. And they can do it either here at the school or at home. And I'm like, Orion, your sister, you got to get your sister in one of these videos. And he's like, Mom. I'm like, come on, dude, she's a great actress. And she goes, I don't know how to act. I'm like, exactly. So I'm like, you got to get your sister in one of these videos. And so the lady is explaining like what they're going to be doing in class and how they're going to be, you know, doing video editing and all this other stuff. And he goes, Mom, I'll be able to actually do it now because and do it correctly. Because I'll be taking this class. And he got super excited because, for those who don't know, Orion wants to do YouTube videos for gaming, okay? And I don't have a problem with this. He has a great mind, and if that's what he wants to do, I wish he would do more, but it's not my life to live. It's his life. So we're going to let him choose what he wants to do, not pressure him into doing something because I think he'd be better at doing something else. So I'm letting him choose what he wants to do. And I'm pretty sure at some point that, you know, want to do social media thing will go away, even though it hasn't for the last 5 years. But he at least, you know, will have a good start in it because he'll have like this media arts class in the bag. And she said that if he likes the class, he can re-sign up for the class for next year and stay in that particular class until high school. And then in high school, they also have a media arts class that is a continuation of this class. And so I was like, oh my God. I'm like, do you ever need chaperones for class? Like, do y'all like let parents come in and sit and make sure that like the classroom's okay and the children are? And she starts laughing. She goes, no. She goes, they're at an age where they should be old enough to go to class by themselves, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, fine. God. Like, I'm so jealous right now. I'm so jealous that he gets to have this background in media arts and they're going to be like literally teaching him all the things. So, we get through with meeting his teacher, okay? Or all of his teachers. And then it's time for Maggie. So we have Maggie's schedule and we're looking and we're like, okay. Now remember, this place is completely discombobulated because of the shutdown of their the website they were using messed up and erased everybody's schedule and everything. So we look on Maggie's paper and it tells us the room number. So we go to that room number. We find it and go, okay, we go to that room number and we get there and the lady goes, hi, how can I help you? And I was like, hey, this, I'm looking for this teacher. And the lady goes, oh, that's not me. And I'm like, well, this is the room number that they gave us for this teacher. And she goes, let me look it up in my computer. Maybe they have it marked wrong or something, or I didn't notice. So she looks and she goes, no, plus that's not my name. And I was like, oh, okay. Do you know where this teacher is? I think she's next door. So I was like, all right. So I look up at the number above the room door and I'm like, okay. So then I go to the next door and I'm like, hi, I'm, such and such, and I'm looking for this teacher. And the lady goes, oh, no, you don't want this room. You want the next room. Look, listen, y'all send me to one more room. I'm going to wig out, okay? So we go to the next room, and there's no teacher in there. And I'm like, there's nobody. Did they just Willy Wonka us into a room with no teacher? Like, is there not going to be a teacher for this class? Well, then this lady walks in. This little adorable lady walks in, and she's like, hi, my new 5th graders, welcome in. And she's like talking to the parents and getting to know the students, and it was really nice. And she comes over to us, and I had questions, because when it comes to Maggie, I have lots of questions. And I was just like, okay, so I have a couple of questions. One, are you guys going to be working together with the other teacher with her IEP? And she goes, yes, we will be working with the IEP folks, and they will be taking her out of class for maybe an hour or so to go do her IEP work. And then, which her IEP stuff is speech. Because Maggie has a speech impediment, she does have like IEPs and stuff like that. So the lady was like, yeah, make sure I was putting that on the right symbol. She goes, yeah, we'll be working with the IEP folks to make sure that she's right where she needs to be to go over to the academy next year. So she had already like looked into her students and knew the students' names and histories and everything else. And she goes, is there anything I need to know about her seizures? And I explained to her that Maggie's in her 6-month recovery period. So it's May to June, June to July, July to August, August to September, September to October. So October to November. So November is when Maggie is out of that 6-month watch range of possibly having seizures. Now, when Maggie gets into this class, she gets a little quiet. She sits down at one of the tables, and she just kind of has her head like down, with her chin down on the table. And you could tell she was a little bit nervous. And so I explained to her about Maggie's seizures and what to look out for. And if she tells you that, she's, telling you that she feels this way, it's not her trying to get out of things. It's that's how you can tell something's about to happen. And the teacher looks her straight in the face and goes, look, if you at any time feel uncomfortable or something happens where you're not feeling the best or whatever, you come to me and tell me and I'll do something about it. She goes, I don't care how stupid you think it is. She goes, you come tell me and I'll do something about it. And I was like, okay, so as for lunch and everything else, like, will she go straight from here from lunch and go to lunch? And they said yes, she'll go straight from here and go to lunch, and then she'll come back here. She goes, but don't even worry about it, because I know them coming from the elementary school, they're used to somebody walking them to lunch. So she goes, for the first month I walk them to lunch to make sure that they know exactly where they're going and they don't get lost. So I was like, all right. And Maggie's like, I'm not going to get lost. I just go downstairs 2 flights, and then there's the lunchroom. And the lady goes, you're smart, huh? And she goes, yep, just like my big brother. And Orion just kind of sits there and goes, ew, Maggie. And I'm like, Orion, be nice to your sister. God. So then we got to meet Maggie's other teachers, and it made me feel a little bit better about the kids going to school. I really like their teachers this year, and I hope they like them too. There was one teacher last year that I didn't like of Orion's because she was a snobby little and she just had this persona of being snobby, and she always gave Orion crap for things. So I was glad to see that he has good teachers this year, and so does Maggie. Maggie won't be switching classes up as much as Orion does, but she will be switching classes up a little bit. So Maggie has a really good teacher, and she'll stay in that teacher's class for the majority of the day, minus for the last couple of days at the end of last couple of classes at the end of the day. She'll go to her elective classes like music, art, stuff like that. PE, which I thought was funny because both kids have PE at the same time. Now, this particular school has 3 different auditoriums, And so Orion will be in one auditorium and Maggie will be in the next auditorium. And I think it's funny because at the end of the day, I literally only have to go pick them up from one school. I don't have to go anywhere else. I just go by that one door, which is the same door that came out of last year. I go by the one, or not last year. Was that last year? No, it wasn't last year. Last year we went to the academy, which is nice that I don't have to wait in that line. But this year I just have to make sure that I go to the one door that I went to when Orion was in 5th grade, and I should be able to pick up both kids from that one door. So I don't have to go across the street to the other school or anything like that. Like, I can park in one spot, get both kids, and we can make our way home. So I'm hoping that they have a good school day today. I hope they have a great school year, and same for your little ones. If your little ones have started school this year or have gotten back to school, I hope they have an amazing school year that is safe and fun and filled with knowledge and all the other fun things that they can wish for in the school year. But yeah, so I'm going to leave it there. Like I said, I might do a second whip and chat later this week, just because, and it's only going to be like 30 minutes, just because, one, I need to really get working on this and get this finished, and two, because I have a surprise coming, and I can't wait to show you guys. So with that said, I must now bid you adieu. But not before reminding you that it's hard out here in these crafty streets. Please stay safe, and always remember to be kind to others, because you never know what somebody else is going through. Be courteous because it's the right thing to do, and always stay cool. And whether you go, I see you in YouTube land or I see you in Twitch land, either way, I'll see you when I see you. Bye, guys.